my Jesus. Well, let me remind you of a few things. Men's breakfast, October 14th, and Brother Steve told me the kitchen is very close to being finished, to the point of probably just putting things away and cleaning up. And tomorrow, right? Is that right, Steve? Tomorrow, 6 o'clock. If you'd like to help do that, we could use some help. Usually guys work from 6 to 8. And so the men's breakfast will be the first big event that we use the kitchen for. I'm looking forward to it. That's at 8 o'clock. And men, if you don't have the book, The Masculine Mandate, we do have some copies in the bookstore over there. And just get one of those. And we're going to look at chapters 1 and 2. Just review. The idea is you read them, and then Pastor Tom, like Pastor Randy used to do, will just remind us of some key things in those 2 chapters. And then we'll have a challenge on biblical masculinity. But we're going to have a good breakfast. We're going to cook some steaks and all kinds of things. So we will have a sign-up list for the breakfast out on the information desk next Sunday. So please do sign up, men, so we know how much food to prepare. And then after the breakfast, around 9:15, we'll get started, and we're going to do some work around the campus here. Our fall, we do a spring cleanup. This will be the fall cleanup. Get ready for the winter. Get the salt boxes out. Isn't that exciting? Okay. Pastor Tom mentioned the exterior of the building. How many of you noticed that this end of the building, the white, is just horribly dirty with whatever's growing on it, and we point lights on it at night, and it looks beautiful, but it attracts the spiders, and then the spiders catch all the bugs, and so this is the worst I've seen it. I think Aaron sprayed it with the power washer a couple times last year, and before that it was someone else, and so we're actually going to get a lift so we can get all the way up. But that's not the only thing that we're going to do. So if you're afraid of heights and water, there's more to do. And even jobs that our children can do. So come out, moms, dads, single men, single women, teens. We'll have plenty to do. Pastor Tom and I are going to walk around this week and make a list of things. And we always have a good time working together. I think it really actually builds the unity of our church, just to work together and have fun and joke with each other all at the same time. So I just wish that Walt would tell more jokes. It'd be more exciting that way. So, yes. Yes.
Oh, good. That's smart.
Hot dog, that's your incentive. That's going to get you out. If nothing else would get you out, a hot dog will keep you here, get you out and keep you here. Okay.
For you all.
All right. And then I want to remind you, we're going to have the coffee ministry team, and I promise you as well that next week we'll have some information that you can hand out. So we'll have postcard size invitations, give a little detail about what the team will be doing. Please, I want you to think of at least 3 people that you would invite to those meetings. Aaron Coffey, I believe, is one of our gifted speaking evangelists. He's really excellent at communicating the gospel on such a level for all to be able to understand it. And so, though he'll be doing more than just preaching to the unsaved, but he will do that, and he'll bring that out in, I think, every service. And so we want people here under the sound of the gospel. And of course, we want to be challenged by the Word of God. And so I'm going to ask you, just make a commitment. Just put this on your calendar and come every night, okay? Unless you're providentially hindered, you're sick, or your boss keeps you at work till 9 o'clock, just be here, okay? Would you do that? And then invite others, okay? Yes?
Some of the folks that we've invited are wondering about the time.
Yes, we're going to have a 6:30 start on those. And choosing 6:30 so that the school kids can come and they're not getting home terribly late. I was telling this to someone earlier today. We were talking about, we have Sunday night service, and sometimes moms and dads are out on Wednesday nights or other nights of the week for discipleship groups and those kinds of things. And, what do you do with the children? Well, what you do with the children is you bring the children, okay? Children will be okay to stay up a little bit later on that week, okay? They'll survive it. In fact, they'll really enjoy it. And by the end of the week, they might get a little tired, and then you can teach them about respectable sins. That we don't tolerate sin just because we have an excuse that we're maybe tired. You teach them how to deal with that. I'm not putting myself up as the example, but Dana and I took our kids to everything, every service, every revival service. Our Sunday night service started at 6. Our pastor was long-winded. Our kids got home late on Sunday night, and they got up in the morning, and they went to school, and they're okay. They survived it. So, young parents, your kids, just have them here. It'll be a good thing, okay? All right. I think that'll do, other than the fact that I'm still giving away free islands. So make sure you get a free island, and you can get one by putting your name on the island list on the information desk. Walt?
I have 5 islands left.
Walt has 5 islands left. You can name your island. I saw one was named. What was that? You named your... Say that again? Okay. Streets of Gold. Okay. She's going to pave her island with gold. Good. So for our guests, we have all these tree islands out there. And there's so many of them. They need to be weeded every now and then. And let me introduce, I have some guests here tonight. This is Adam Bailey, his wife Cheryl. They have 2 boys. One is over there. They've trusted their 4-year-old son to us at Expeditions. And Adam is an administrator, Christian school in Massachusetts. And he's here because, believe it or not, I have been the treasurer of the New England Association of Christian Schools. And I've been trying to fire myself for a couple years. And Adam is the athletic director of the New England Association of Christian Schools. And so he's firing himself. He's got a young family, and that Job has had him at schools traveling around and late. I'm sure his wife will appreciate maybe getting a different responsibility. So I'm going to be the secretary. I can do that job. But treasurer, that's something that someone else with actual abilities with finances should have. So that's Adam. That's you, okay? All right. Well, please meet them. Adam's a really neat guy, and I'm really glad that we're friends on the board there at New England Association of Christian Schools. All right, well, let's take our Bibles, turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 9. 1 Corinthians chapter 9, doing something unusual. Usually don't teach from a book, but that's what we've been doing. And how many of you, I know I asked this the first night we started this, but how many of you have read Bridges' book, Respectable Sins? All right, and a few of you have. And with 8 lessons, those 8 lessons took more than 8 Sunday nights, but with 8 lessons, we have examined these sins. He calls them respectable sins, but what they are is they're sins that we tend to tolerate in our lives as Christians. In other words, we look at the sins of the world and we say, oh, that's bad, that's horrible, that's evil, that's wicked. Meanwhile, there are sins in our lives that we've learned to tolerate. So he calls them respectable sins. Worse yet, there's sins in our lives that maybe we haven't even recognized as sin. And the one I keep coming back to that I've told you about that's in my life is frustration. I get to be frustrated, okay? Because someone frustrated me. Well, my response to that someone, frustration, is sin. And so we're just hoping to become aware of these things that we have tolerated in our lives, maybe not even recognized as sin in our lives. So this look at this is coming to a close very soon. In fact, just one more week, and after next week, then Aaron Coffey will have Sunday night, and the Sunday after that, we'll have our missionaries, the Beemans, with us. So really looking forward to that. And he won't be here for Sunday evening, but he's going to do a combined life group, and then he'll speak in our morning service. And so then we'll move on to something new for Sunday nights. So coming to a close, the sins that we want to look at tonight are really all related to our passions. And so if you have a handout tonight, that's the first blank there. That last sentence of that first paragraph, they're all related to our passions. Anyone not get a handout? Raise your hand. All right, I didn't think so. And so let's begin by talking about the lack of self-control. Probably not super common, I think, in this group. I think most of you have good temperance, self-control, but it certainly can be an issue. And let's begin by defining self-control. So Bridges, in his book, defines it this way, and you'll see this again on your handout. A governance or prudent control of one's desires, cravings, impulses, emotions, and passions. So that's what we want. We want to govern those things in our life, that we have control over those things. Which one do you think might be the biggest problem for us? Cravings, impulses, emotions, or passions? It depends, right? Depends on the person. Don't look around, point fingers. I don't think we need to. But have you ever known someone that just really had a hard time controlling their emotions? And that's really bad the older that person is. We have some children in the school that's something that we battle with. And some of those children we battle with very strongly. Not strongly, but in other words, it's a difficult thing for some of them. Usually I'll say that when we see that there's tensions or problems in the home, or the home is broken or something like that. But the lack of self-control. So maybe we adults have this down. Maybe this is something that you need to work with your grandchildren about, or your children, but maybe yourself, okay? Probably every one of us have an area in our life where we do need better control. I can think of one in my life, okay? I won't confess to you, though, tonight. I've done that through this series before, but I won't do that tonight, okay? So, Bridges goes on to say that self-control may be simply defined as, and I like this is in your notes too, simply defined as saying no when we should say no. Self-control, saying no when we should say no. Now, a person who is exercising self-control is one who understands the concepts, two of them, the concepts of moderation, there's your blank, moderation and restraint. Okay? In areas of legitimate desires, there are legitimate desires, of course, and in areas of legitimate desires and activities, there should be moderation. Okay? Let me illustrate this for you with my life. Okay? I love recreational vehicles. I love recreational vehicles. From the time I was probably upper elementary, junior high, early high school, it was dirt bikes. And we managed to do dirt bikes even in suburban Chicago. And there was sin involved with that. Okay? Getting to where the forest preserves was the sin part, okay, because they weren't street legal. But I love recreational vehicles. Started with dirt bikes. It doesn't matter how many wheels it has. I love it, okay? In some cases, it doesn't even have to have wheels. But 2 wheels, 3 wheels, 4 wheels. There were 3-wheelers when I was growing up. I remember the 3-wheelers, and then they decided those were too dangerous, I think. So, in fact, in junior high, I even used a unicycle. That's a bad picture now, isn't it? We don't want to see that, Pastor Rob. Yeah, I don't think I could do it right now. All right, here's the illustration before I get too silly with it. In Vermont, of course, we could get the snowmobiles out. I could do that too. That'd be fun. So again, they don't have to have wheels. But in Vermont, with the recreational vehicles that have wheels, the time to use them is somewhat limited. Okay, in fact, this week I just had it in my mind. The motorcycle's probably not going to be out too many times within the next few weeks before it's time to sort of put it away for the winter. Okay, I don't like to ride when it's below 50 degrees. If any of you that have been on a motorcycle on the street, 50 degrees below, it's just flat out cold. All right? So here's the illustration. I could fill that garage over there with recreational vehicles. Okay? Do you think Dana might have a problem if there was a dirt bike in there, a cruising bike in there, a sport bike in there, a snowmobile in there, a 4-wheel in there, and I filled it up with recreational vehicles because I love recreational vehicles? Worse yet, what if I went to the deacons at a deacons meeting early spring? I said, guys, you know how Vermont is. I got to get my riding time in. So I'll probably be missing, 8 Sundays so that I can be on the trails and on the road with the bike. How's that going to go, Mike? Is it, you're our pastor. Can't be gone that often. Okay, of course not. So I need to exercise some self-control, okay? It's been a busy summer. I haven't had that much time on the motorcycle. You're supposed to feel bad for me. You're supposed to say, for the next few weeks, Pastor Rob, you just be out on that motorcycle and you enjoy the color as you ride and ride through the mountains, okay? All right, do you get it? Moderation. I would think that most of you would say, I think it's good that Pastor Rob has a hobby, that he's out every once in a while. Could you imagine if I told Dana every single weekend, from Friday night to Sunday morning, I'm on the motorcycle? See, what I do is I get her on the back of the motorcycle. I take her to breakfast. See? That's how that works. And she'll do that with me. Isn't that nice? Okay? Moderation. Okay, what is it for you? Okay, for some people, it's actually their job. that they work so hard at their job, they're workaholics, and their wife is neglected or their husband is neglected. I hope you like your job. Hope you love your job. I love my job. But I also have a family. That family's gotten smaller and smaller as the youngest one just got married this summer, but the family's gotten smaller. And I have a wife. I can't, be in the office 24/7. All right? Same thing for you. Okay? To do that to that extent, when we are neglecting other responsibilities, is that sin?
Yes.
Of course. It is sin. So, in legitimate areas, do you see that? In legitimate areas, moderation is the key. However, in areas of sinful desires or activities, there is to be absolute restraint. Because some of our passions are just flat out sinful. May not be sinful to ride a motorcycle, but some passions are sinful. And that demands that we completely restrain ourselves. Okay? And we can think of examples of that. So I want you in your mind, can you think of some examples where we may lack self-control and therefore we kind of put it in this category that, well, it's my hobby, or it's what I like, or it's me, and so it's just not controlled the way it ought to be controlled. So I have some examples. If you look ahead, you'll be able to figure them out, so please don't do that, because I want to ask you of some examples where we can lack self-control. Go. I gave you an illustration. You give me some examples. Examples of a lack of self-control with people. Yes, Aaron. Purchases. Yeah. I had I'll say this, best teacher I ever had was way back in my Michigan days. We had a man who, he was an elementary teacher. I love to see male elementary teachers. We don't have any, but we do have men in our school. I'm thankful for Matthew, young guy now, who's athletic. I'm past, I crossed that bridge a long time ago. But Matthew, when he came to visit, to check the school out, he played soccer with the boys. And I was in the hallway when they got done with recess. And he was like the Pied Piper. All these young elementary boys were behind him. Pastor Rob, Mr. Harris is awesome at soccer. Okay. So this man was an elementary teacher. Overall best teacher I ever had. Really could teach, and the students loved him, and he was having tremendous amount of influence, spiritual influence in their life. He also coached soccer, so that added to the influence that he had. Good sports are a good thing for young men, aren't they, Adam? I know what they did in my life. But here's the problem. His name was Paco, and I don't know why we called him Paco, because he wasn't a Paco. But anyway, his wife could not control spending money. I mean, it was bad. And for years, he kept coming to me, and he'd sit down in my office, and he'd hang his head, and he said, I don't think I can teach anymore. He said, my salary, I'm not making enough salary. And then he told me what's happening with his wife and the credit card debt. She racked up $20,000 of credit card debt. Definitely a problem of self-control, isn't it? And the sad thing is, the best teacher I ever had actually got to the point where he couldn't stay at the school on just that salary. And he may still be doing it to this day. I don't have regular access to him, but at one point he was working 3 jobs. And he was a slave to his wife's lack of self-control. That's extreme. But Aaron is right. Making purchases. Next order on Amazon. You know, it almost becomes like, oh, I get to order something on Amazon. Are we exercising good stewardship and self-control? All right, I could go too long with the illustrations and our time runs out here, but that's a good one. Anyone else? Areas in which we can lack self-control? Charlie?
Media, especially the internet.
Okay, yeah. Not controlling screen time is what we call it for the kids, right? My phone tells me how much time I use what's on the phone. And it breaks it down. You use this app this amount of time this week, and this app. And boy, there's been times where that was convicting to say, I spent too much time on Facebook. Right? So sometimes it's things like that that can help us, show us where we've spent our time. Jim, you have a comment?
On the road.
What?
On the road.
On the road, what do you mean? Self-control on the road. I think I know what you mean.
I'll be fair and I'll start with me.
Okay.
First of all, I thank God for cruise control because I'm very comfortable
Cruise control.
driving, and sometimes 50 or 60 could feel like 35. So I use cruise control a lot. But it's increasingly more and more difficult to be patient with the
Yeah.
other drivers because there's seems like 95% total disregard for the law in
Right.
so many ways. I don't have to enunciate it.
Right.
Everybody sees it.
Right. And that gets into other respectable sins that we've dealt with. The lack of patience with others, yeah.
I have been known to mention their names and that sort of thing, or what their name should be.
Okay. All right, well, we're gonna very quickly run through 3 of these things. So look at your notes, common examples of a lack of self-control. The first one is the temper. The temper. This one I did confess to you, tell you there was a time in my life as a teenager where temper was a serious problem. Remember I told you my mother said, just before I left for Bob Jones, she said, well, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Really? What? You guys, Mom, you and Dad are visiting just 2 weeks? Oh, you're going to get angry at a roommate, you're going to punch him in the face, they're going to expel you, and they're going to... Because I was a fighter. I was a fighter in high school. I know I don't look like it now, but I was. Temper. We must control our temper. You know, that can... I've really grown in that. Okay? Sanctification has been an area of growth for me, but every once in a while, that temper can just stick its ugly head out there. Right? And then I have to be reminded. So temper, easily flying off the handle, having a short fuse. For lack of time, let me just keep going. And the second one there is the tongue. Now, we already dealt with that as another tolerable sin. And I think it wasn't even last week, so I won't go through it. Other than now the issue here is that we need to control the tongue. Okay? And then the third one there is the one Aaron mentioned, and that is use of money. Use of money. Sometimes when money is brought up, we look at other people, and we immediately think of those who have debt. But it may be that debt is a lack of self-control, but this can be a sin for even people that are affluent. Is that the right word? That actually have things. Okay? So that's the third, having control over those areas. Okay? Simple illustrations that just show areas where we could lack self-control. Maybe there's one in your mind that's different than these. Okay? And with some of these things, we might say, well, what's the big deal? Okay, what's the big deal about these things? And so look at your notes. There's 2 basic thoughts that I want you to see concerning the problem of the lack of self-control. And that's why I asked you to go to 1 Corinthians and look at chapter 9, verse 27. So 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 27. Paul says, "But I discipline my body. I bring it under subjection. I bring it under control." So Paul is saying, this is what I do, and I do this, one of the reasons that I do this, so that when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified, or if I don't. Okay? So I keep under my body, I bring it into subjection, lest that by any reason when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway. All right? All of us have some areas where we are tempted to lose control, something that is controlling us. However, here what Paul is saying is one of the reasons we ought to strive to bring this under control is because of the sake of our testimony. Isn't that Paul's point?
Yes.
Okay, that is his point. He just says it. I discipline my body, I bring it in subjection so that I can preach and people will actually hear me. Okay? And then let's go to Proverbs 25. Would you just quickly turn there? Proverbs 25 and verse 28. I'll ask someone out there to read that. So if you would read it, if you raise your hand. Proverbs 25:28. Who would read that for us? All right, you got it. Go ahead, read that. I think we're all there now.
Whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls.
All right, this tells us the seriousness of not having temperance, self-control. As you are aware, in biblical times, these ancient cities, for the safety of the city, had walls for its citizens. Those were a great line of defense against an enemy. And so if those walls were broken down, the city was susceptible to attack. What's the illustration here? A person that lacks self-control is vulnerable to attacks. Probably the big one being temptation, right? And so that's for your notes. A person who lacks self-control is vulnerable to attacks or temptations. And if we refuse to bring all things into subjection, there is the possibility that it leads to greater sins. Now, very quickly, let's just fly through the rest of these. More tolerable sins here, or those that go unnoticed in our life. The next one is envy. The sin of envy. Bridges defines it this way: the painful and oftentimes resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by someone else. If we desire to have what they have, that leads to the sin of, what do you think goes in that blank? Covetousness. The sin of covetousness. The question is, what causes us to envy someone, yet not others? And just for the sake of filling in all the blanks, we envy those with whom we closely identify. Identify is a blank, right? We envy those who work in areas that we value the most. So it might be envy those in our same job or that have the same hobby or so forth. Those that have the same interests that we do. We don't tend to envy those who differ from us. We could, but Bridges points out that the reason we are tempted to envy in these situations is that there are enough things alike that the differences tend to strike us in the face. The next one is jealousy. So let me throw that one out to you. What might we as Christians have a tendency to be jealous about? If you give an example, we're not all going to look at you and say, oh, it must be their problem. Okay, we won't do that. What might we be jealous about?
Somebody else's good fortune, award, or success.
Yeah, I like the award one. Someone got an award that I should have gotten. What's wrong with the person that's handing out the awards? Do they not see that I'm better than that? Okay, right? How many times has that happened? Okay, good. What else? Areas where we can it happen in the church? What happened in the church of Corinth? 1 Corinthians chapter 1. Can you imagine this? Jealousy and divisions or schisms over, who's the best pastor? Is it Pastor Tom or is it Pastor Rob? Who do you follow? Do you follow Pastor Tom or do you follow Pastor Rob? Or if you're really pious, you're dripping with piety. Not piety's good, right? Pious. Oh, I only follow Christ. Oh, well, good for you. You're so spiritual. Okay. I think, and I don't think the leaders themselves had the envy, but the people were, dividing over that. Okay. Jealousy. Jealousy is defined as an intolerance of rivalry. I think that's a good definition. Rivalry is your blank there. An intolerance of rivalry. Sinful jealousy takes place when we feel that someone else will become equal to us or surpass us. Equal to us or surpass us. And you see it there. Would you agree that the greatest example of jealousy in the Bible is found in the life of King Saul? Okay. After David slew Goliath, David became a national hero, right? Kids were putting his posters up in the wall, in their bedrooms. Okay. He was loved and adored by the children of Israel in the eyes of many. 1 Samuel 18, verse 7, we read that women of Israel were singing, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. Now, I think that would make just about any man jealous, right? I'd have a hard time with that one. Pastor Tom has slain 10,000 more than Pastor Rob.
Glad we're not in the killing business.
We're not, thank you. We're not in the killing business. All right, so that one, yeah, I think every man would, when women are singing your praises, and now they're not, they're singing praises of the other guy, that would make a guy jealous. Okay? Is all jealousy a sin? Can you think of a jealousy that isn't a sin?
God is a jealous God.
The Bible says that, doesn't it? So what does that mean? God is a jealous God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me, because he's the only God. He's the one true God. And he will have no rivals. And he gets to do that because he's God, because he's the great creator. So God is jealous in that way. Okay? Men, you can be jealous if another man is trying to woo the affections of your wife. That's okay. Now, don't be sinfully jealous. The reactions to that kind of thing. All right, competitiveness for self-exaltation. So, next to competitive spirit, right, for self-exaltation. Actually, one of the things that's really concerned me, especially since COVID, and we have some teachers in the room, and we have an athletic director in the room, is that I would like to see some of our kids have a little more aggressiveness to them and to be competitive in a good way. Okay? But there is a competitiveness that becomes sinful. That's when I must exalt myself and I'm the greatest, and you should notice that I'm the best. And so I have to beat you at everything. And I need to beat you at any cost. That is a sin. Okay? Always having to win and not knowing how to lose. So another good thing about sports is sometimes we need to learn the lesson of how to lose. Okay? When I was wrestling, I know that picture's gone too. When I was wrestling in high school, my coach would say, guys, we never get up too high when we win, and we never get down too low when we lose. We need to learn how to handle both, the winning and the losing. I don't know what that is for an adult in their life, but how do you handle that? Okay? Yeah, it's okay to say I want to be excellent at my job. But it's not okay to say I have to crush everybody else to get the praise of my boss, obviously, okay? The person who always needs to be the best, okay? What other areas do we see competitiveness? You can think about that. And that next blank there, instead of being the best, the Bible would teach us to what? Do our best. There's a difference. Okay? And the Bible would teach us to do all things for the glory of God. You go to the wilds and you quote the verse before every meal, 1 Corinthians 10:31. It's really unofficially or officially our school verse, right? Whether therefore, say it with me, you eat or drink or whatsoever you do all for what reason? For the glory of God. Okay? So be in control. Okay? But that can be another tolerable sin. The fact that I have to be in control. So we'll end with that one. That's on the back page. A controlling spirit, having to always be in control. There are people like that. Having to control other people, always having to have the advantage to get what you want. Seeking to control others. How do people do that? There's different ways. In the notes, we can control others by our personality. There are some people that have a strong personality. Nothing wrong with that unless you're always using that for your advantage. Always using that to be over you and in control of you. Okay, there's a place sometimes for a person with that really strong personality to set it aside for a while. I think that should be done in the church. Set that aside for the sake of the body. Okay. This dominating by my personality all my relationships. Okay, and I always get my way. That's sinful. And then the other one you see there is we can control others by our emotions. Manipulating people with their emotions. That's pretty rough. Okay? Whether that's, again, the short fuse thing or that's, crying and being upset. Okay? Men can do this control thing one way, and women can tend to do it the other way. Generally speaking, okay? Controlling people with tears and carrying on. You see it with children, right? There's a video out there. It's a very young child, and just screaming and crying. And as soon as the face of the parent shows up, because now they've got the child, automatic, just shuts off completely, just stops in an instant. The parent walks away for 2 seconds screaming like they're dying. Parent's head comes back into the view of the child, stops automatically, no tears. It's just pure manipulation. Okay. That would look bad as adults, right? Either way, when we do this kind of thing, we are just manipulating the circumstances for our selfish advantage, and that, of course, is sin. So God is not pleased with these controlling sins. So let me end by saying this. It's fair to ask the question, and I should ask myself the question. Am I in control of my emotions, all these aspects? Is there temperance? Is there self-control? Can I say that my body, my emotions, my passions, my desires are in subjection, or is something else ruling those? And when they're ruling me and when they're ruling you, they are sinful. Okay? And sometimes these are subtle things, but they must be dealt with, again, and dealt with for the sake of God's glory. All right, we have some time to take some testimonies. I'd like to start with that. The good news about the good news.